today I'm going to sort of be encouraging you to do a little bit of self-reflection, I suppose, and we'd love to hear anything that you feel confident to share. If you do have any questions or want to say anything, just do it as we go along. Don't save it to the end when there's no time left. But if you could stay on mute when you're not speaking, that's going to be incredible because it's going to be quite hard to hear otherwise. But as I say, the session's being recorded. You don't have to individually record it. And of course, any of your colleagues that couldn't make it today will be able to watch this back. So, just to sort of introduce myself as well, I'm actually used to be an insurance broker. So I've run a regulated business. It was actually medical insurance, but I about 8 years ago did a master's in workplace health and well-being, and I've studied how employers can really make a difference. In terms of employee happiness by trying to encourage them to look at issues like personal power and resilience. I'm also a mental health first aid instructor, and some of what I'm talking about today will sort of touch a little bit on your stress levels, your resilience levels, your mental health. But really, what we're trying to do here today specifically is empower you to cultivate confidence, unwavering confidence, and just sort of tap into that personal power that you have. So you're going to today explore some strategies to try and overcome any self-doubt you might have, which is a very normal human experience, but also to enhance self-respect and build self-esteem and unleash your full potential. So we really want to equip you with the tools and the mindset to become unstoppable in pursuing whatever your goals are. So we'll look at these sort of four key areas. We'll look at trying to develop an understanding of what do we mean by self-confidence and personal power. We'll also look at self-limiting beliefs and patterns. Often when I do this section, that's the one when people say, wow, okay, that's me. Nicola, you've raised your hand. Did you not mean to? No, I think you didn't mean to. Okay. The other thing then is cultivating self-compassion, kind of thinking about your self-image, and also to really think about your communication and assertiveness skills to help you feel more sort of confident. I'm not going to run this as a poll, but if you would like to get involved in answering this question, from a scale of 1 to 5, I would love to see where you are with this. So I'd love to hear where your understanding is of how you can overcome self-limiting beliefs and how you can increase confidence and personal power. So 1 is I have no understanding really, and 5 is I'm right up there. I totally get it. So where are you right now with your understanding of how you overcome all of this? Okay, so we've got quite a range here. The person that said 5, please chip in as we go through, but I want to hear from all of you as well. Oh, quite a few of you are kind of up there with 5s. So a real big range actually here today. So I'm sure that we can learn from each other as well today because there's some people that feel really confident in this skill. So I want to start to think about your inner confidence and your personal power. And what I'm talking about here, just to sort of qualify this, self-confidence or inner confidence, this is that belief in yourself and your abilities to succeed in various situations and various challenges. If you want to comment on this, please in the chat, just let me know where you are. Perhaps you would like to improve your inner confidence. Perhaps your inner confidence is not very good. Perhaps you've not thought about it before. So maybe with words rather than numbers now, let me know where you are. How would you rate your inner confidence? Would you say you do feel quite confident? Perhaps you experience a lot of imposter syndrome. So where are you with that? So yeah, could be better. Really useful comment. So that's the sort of comment I'm looking for. Something that you might want to improve. People are saying pretty low. Really good point, Donna. It depends on the situation. Yeah. And some people saying not great with new things, zero confidence, lots of self-doubt. And it varies day to day, Emma. Yeah, really relevant point there. A lot of people saying self-critical. And yeah, I love this point that Richard's making. You can come across as a lot more confident than you actually feel. Um, the personal power point then is about this inner strength, this resilience, and perhaps assertiveness that we possess to influence our lives and our circumstances. Now, both of these serve as real catalysts for achieving goals. But I wonder how you would rate your personal power, that inner strength, that resilience, that assertiveness. Um, so, what are your thoughts about that? And I'm just going to read out some of your confidence comments in the meantime. Inner confidence is not what you look at in the mirror. Really good point, Julie. And Elaine saying, as you get older, you can become less confident. Quite agree with you there. As a menopausal woman, a 56-year-old menopausal woman, I know that certain stages in life can diminish your confidence. However, perhaps other people as they get older feel more confident. So it's a very personal, sort of individual thing, really, isn't it? And it's quite hard to rate. So let's start to think about these topics as we begin this session. We really want to ground ourselves in two essential ingredients for growth: self confidence, personal power. So, self confidence, it's not about never feeling doubt, it's about choosing to trust your abilities, even when things are uncertain. Whereas personal power, it's that deeper reservoir of strength that we all carry. It's that resilience to sort of bounce back and the assertiveness to speak up. You have these inner thoughts, but sometimes you don't say anything. But having that assertiveness to trust your inner thoughts and speak up and to shape your own path, even when external circumstances can really push back. So, together, these two qualities really act as a powerful catalyst for reaching your goals. They really drive action, they drive persistence and presence. But I really want to now sort of pivot and ask yourself, what gets in the way? Where are these inner blocks that can slow us down or pull us off track? So, in the next part of this session, we're going to explore some of those obstacles. We're going to explore, where do these self limiting beliefs come from? Why do we have persistent doubt? Or, as Gerard says, it varies on the day. So, why at some points in the day do we have self doubt? And also, what about the absence of self acceptance? And so, how can we begin to dissolve these issues? Because it's one thing to understand what fuels success, but it's another to clear the path so that we can access it more fully. Okay, so let's now start to talk about self limiting beliefs. Who recognizes some of these statements? I'm not good enough. I'm afraid of failure. Hi, Chris. I think we've met before. Not wanting to show vulnerability can be self-limiting. Absolutely. Yeah, really good point. So, do we recognize this? I'm afraid of failure. I don't deserve success. These are self-limiting beliefs. I'm too old. When I hear myself saying, oh, it's my menopause brain, I think, oh, don't say that, because it's a sort of self limiting belief. Yes, the menopause does cause issues, but it's a self limiting belief that I can't thrive because of that. Oh, I'm just not lucky. I've never been lucky. This is very common. A lot of you are saying yes, 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 yes. A lot of us recognize these statements. Some of you are saying all of them. First, second, and fifth ones for sure. So this is the challenge, isn't it? And I want to think about, where does this come from? And also to think about imposter syndrome, because these are the five common traps that kind of make us fall into these pits of self-limiting beliefs. So I want to ask you a sort of a quick question. Which of these sounds like you? And I will, of course, explain this, but one of these might just jump out at you already. One of these might be like really, really strongly there for you. So maybe just jot down which one jumps out at you right now. Maybe you don't want to share it, and I totally understand with your colleagues. Some of you know each other quite well, I'm sure. So maybe just drop it down on your phone or on a piece of paper, or even put it in the chat. Um, and by the way, we need perfectionists in the insurance world. Having run an insurance broker myself, I'm not a perfectionist, and I definitely needed them because we have to get it right. So we're not saying that there's always a judgment on some of these labels, but they can be self-limiting. So this is a no judgment zone, because here's the truth. Imposter syndrome doesn't just affect new people in your business. It doesn't just affect people early in their careers, it affects people at all levels. It includes high performers, it includes experienced professionals like many of you. And the more we understand the different ways it shows up, the more power, personal power we have to work through it. So let's start with perfectionist, because I've got a bit of a feeling here that that is the one that's coming up more than anything. But yeah, Richard, I understand why you would hate writing that natural genius. It doesn't feel comfortable to say that about yourself, or even hero. But a lot of you are saying I recognize quite a few of these. So let's look at perfectionist, because the core belief here is if it's not flawless, I'm a fraud. People in this pattern often set unrealistically high standards for themselves. You might spend hours tweaking and polishing the small details, often long past the point when the work is already good enough. So let me give you an example. Let's take Maria. She's a project manager. She often rewrites team reports late into the night, not because they're wrong, but because she wants to make sure no one can criticize a single thing. And when her projects succeed, she credits luck. But if there's one typo, that confirms her fear that she's not good enough. And this is the danger with this. I don't know if that sort of sounds familiar, but here's the shift we want to make here. Instead of aiming for perfect, aim for valuable. Ask yourself, does this serve the goal? And instead of waiting for perfect, celebrate the checkpoints. Done and delivered matters more than flawless and late. So we have to sort of notice those checkpoints. But let's talk about a few of you are natural geniuses. And what do we mean by that? So let me just explain this one. This sort of belief is really, if I have to struggle, I mustn't be smart. You know, people in this category often expect things to come easily. And when they face a challenge, they take it personally, like it means they are not good enough. So, just to give you an example, Tarek sailed through school, and then when he joined a coding boot camp and hit his first technical challenge, he immediately started doubting himself. Real programmers don't get stuck. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. And what happens? What's wrong with this? Well, Tarek shuts down, he quits very early and he hides the struggle. So his reframe would be effort doesn't disprove ability, it builds ability. So you want to sort of track the time you put into learning, not just the results. And progress happens through repetition. Skill equals talent times effort. And then the third one is the expert. So let's talk about this. This type believes I need to know everything before I speak up. Experts, I don't think many of you have chosen this one, but experts tend to take a lot of courses, collect a lot of certifications, delay launching ideas because they feel they still don't know enough. So, for example, Linda, she's got 10 years of marketing experience. She still dreads being asked questions in meetings. What if I don't know the latest update? What if I don't know the latest update on social media algorithms? And let's face it, algorithms change all the time. So she over prepares, she ends up undersharing. So the problem is not a lack of knowledge, it's setting up a totally impossible bar. And Emma's asking, can you be a mix of the two? Yes, you could be all of these actually. And some of you have got at least two. Um, but I guess there is one that we tend to lean into a bit more than others. So here's the shift for her, for Linda. Instead of waiting to know everything, trying a sort of research while doing approach, giving yourself a set amount of prep time and then acting. And when you get a tough question, it's fine to say, that's a really good question. Let's look into it together. And that's not a weakness, that's actually leadership. So it's about reframing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. I just want to finish off the last two. Superhero, quite a few of you have chosen this one. This person sort of believes my value comes from how much I can handle. Do you find yourself, Rebecca and Julie and Martin, working like nights and weekends? Are you the one that says, let me take that on? Let me take that on for you if somebody else is struggling? She's saying yes. Um, yeah. Thank you, Carolyn. And yeah, Martin, you do work too much. Jane, you work too much. Right. We do not want Jane, Martin, Natalie heading towards burnout, do we? We need you guys. We need you in the business. We don't want you burning out. So we have to do something about being a superhero. So, skipping breaks is a very common one. Turning down help. And while you might look like top performers from the outside, on the inside, I imagine that you are exhausted. Maybe not, but maybe you are feeling a little bit exhausted, Martin, and the others that said superhero. So to give you an example, somebody I used to work with, they were juggling full-time work. They were juggling MBA classes and caregiving for a parent. And people were praising their commitment, but any small slip up, like missing a workout, felt like a personal failure. So, for those of you that are saying, I am exhausted, I am working on my days off, I'm working in my holidays, we can't carry on like this, can we? We need to make a shift, because if you're exhausted, well, you're not living your life to your fullest. We need to make a shift. Maybe that shift comes with some help from your employee assistance program. I'm not sure. I'm sure, as insurers, you've got something in place, some support that you can contact, speak to your manager about it. So, if you want to reframe this, your worth is not tied to how much you carry. So maybe do a quick capacity check. Write down everything you're doing and then highlight the tasks that only you can do. And the rest, try and delegate where you can. Instead of saying, I did it all, try saying, I built a system that doesn't depend only on me. And that's power. That's personal power. Yeah, being a carer, Julie, it's tricky because you're juggling even more. So the last one, and a few of you have said soloist. I'm just going to sort of look back and see which ones of you said soloist. So um, they believe if I ask for help, I'll be exposed as a fraud. So, Elsie has said soloist, Gerard, Rishi. So quite a few of you have said soloist, Paul. So if I ask for help, I'll be exposed. Now, I'm not saying that is you, but that's a sort of stereotypical soloist sort of profile. And you're often the people that build everything from scratch. You don't ask questions, you resist mentoring, you turn down collaborations, even if it could help you succeed. And I used to work with a freelance designer, and when a client suggested partnering with a copywriter, that designer immediately thought, oh no, they must not think I'm capable on my own. So we need to have that shift to see help not as a weakness, but as leverage, because high performers use support systems, they build networks, they ask for help early, not as a last resort. So if this is you, obviously start small, that sort of Kaizen baby step approach. Maybe ask for a quick, ask somebody for some support with this. The more practice, the easier it becomes. So let's just bring this home. Each of these patterns, perfectionist, natural genius, etc., they all come actually from the same place. It's the fear of being found out. But none of these, here's the good news, none of these are fixed. They are just habits that you have fallen into. These are default settings that you can completely learn to update. So I wonder, what reframe are you going to try this week? Maybe put it in the chat. From imposter to unstoppable you, because you're not an imposter. You're growing. These patterns do not mean you're broken, they mean you care. So the more we understand how imposter syndrome shows up in us, the more we can shift into confidence and clarity and action. So I'm going to talk next about some practical tools to help you build confidence every day so you can stop second guessing and you can start to lead with power. So I love that you've started putting comments in the chat. I think delegation is one of the best qualities for a manager or a leader. Yep, I agree, Jade. And thank you. Jane's going to try to delegate tasks. So we need to take action. But I think here is the point where you'll go, oh, yes, I recognize this. Do you recognize automatic negative thoughts? Now, I'm not a counselor. I'm a workplace well-being specialist, a mental health instructor, and I studied stress management. But when I talk to people about improving their well-being or improving their mental health or managing stress, this is a really important part of it, because we need to recognize what we all have. Well, most of us, some people don't seem to fall into this trap, but a lot of us have these automatic negative thoughts, and often they'll fall into these sort of three areas. And again, maybe you recognize some of these, and we're going to move on to the solutions in a moment. But personalization is thinking that the problem is you, instead of thinking there are other things outside of you that have caused it. And realizing outside factors have caused a bad situation allows us to reduce the blame and the self criticism that we put on ourselves. Permanence is thinking about a bad situation that is going to last forever. So this might mean that, a setback. So those who think setbacks are temporary, have improved ability to accept and adapt for the future. If you have that permanent automatic negative thought, you might think the setback is forever. Then we've got pervasiveness. So that is thinking about a bad situation that is across the whole of your life instead of happening in just one area. So people who think bad situations are pervasive feel that all of the areas of their life are impacted. So, what do we do about it? This is what we're here for, isn't it? How do we tackle this? Maybe you've tried this before, and if you feel you need help with this, please do call your employee assistance program, get some support from some sort of counselor. No one will ever know you've called it. So it's a really great way of tackling this. But you can do it on your own as well. And what we need to tackle ants with is ant eaters. Okay. So, what do we need to do? How do we eat these ants? How do we eat these knee jerk pop up thoughts like, you blew it, or they're judging you, or why bother trying? So, there are some places where these automatic negative thoughts thrive. You know, personalization, the example of that might be, oh, that client cancelled because I'm really bad at presentations. And you're ignoring their budget cut. You're ignoring their real reasons that are outside of your control. Permanence might be, oh, I completely ruined that interview. I'm never going to get promoted, a promotion. And pervasiveness might be, oh, I'm a failure at relationships because, that relationship didn't work, so I'm just not going to bother trying. So these three distortions can turn a single ant into a complete infestation. So I'm going to give you this mnemonic, ant eater. So what we mean by this is pausing. So it's awareness, pausing and going, oh, that is a negative pop-up. So if you're willing to share, I mean, you are amazing. You've all shared so much already, but do you recognize a pop-up thought that occurs when you sort of open your mouth or when you walk into a room? Can you think of that sort of pop-up thought? Because what we need to do with that is actually bring it to the fore and sort of quietly say it out loud to ourselves. Oh, that is a negative thought. That's an automatic thought. We need to then name that. So we need to label it. Ah, okay, that's that personalization thing that Debbie was talking about on that session that she did the other day. The test then, so the T is okay, so I am unlikable is the negative thought. What is that? Well, maybe that's personalization, so let's label it. Well, hang on a minute. What evidence? So the T is a test. What evidence, what hard evidence proves this 100%? And if you ask yourself that question, the file is often empty. There is not hard evidence to prove the thought 100%. And yeah, so some really thank you so much for sharing in the chat, you guys. It's so great that you can show that vulnerability because it helps us all. You know, by you saying that, it helps us kind of go, oh, okay, this is normal because I think that too. I think I might say something stupid through ignorance of a situation. I feel I might not be good enough or I don't know enough. So it's a very common thing. So thank you for sharing. But how do we eat these ants then? How do we eat these thoughts of, I can't fix the situation, or I'm going to say something stupid? So we have to examine the alternatives. So we need to generate at least one sort of neutral option or positive explanation. So for example, I'm in a room full of experts, might be the automatic thought that Kim's just shared. So maybe that's a bit of a pervasive sort of thought. What evidence do I have that I'm not good enough to be in that room full of experts? What evidence do I have? So you start to sort of examine the alternatives. Yes, I am in a room full of experts, but that doesn't mean I don't have something to offer. I've got something unique to bring to this. So, what action step am I going to take? How am I going to change this? So, maybe you're going to choose a concrete move that fits your alternative view, and then you're going to track the outcome. So, let me just show you the slide that looks at the eater concept. We can turn our ants into pets. So we can turn them into something that is a bit more useful. And the eater analogy that I want to sort of leave you with is the echo, ask, tackle, evaluate, and rectify. So, for example, we get this thought that pops up. We want to say it out loud. You think, I'm going to mess up this presentation, but you say it out loud. Why? Why do we say it out loud? Because it echoes the spin cycle. It slows the spin cycle and it moves the thought from emotional to a verbal center because then we can inspect it. If we've verbalized it, we can inspect it. And I just want to give you an inner child tip. We want to speak the line in the most gentle voice you've ever used with like the 5-year-old version of yourself. And notice how the sharp edges kind of soften. And I want you to think about ask, the second step. Ask curious questions. Is this 100% true? What evidence do I have to support this? What evidence contradicts this? What would I tell a friend who says this? Because we're really good at telling our friends really good advice. And curiosity kind of gets the ant out of its hiding place and it sort of replaces the fear. T is for tackle. So tackle this thought with perhaps journaling. So look, maybe you've got a 10 a.m. demo to your team. Maybe your thought is they'll see that I'm clueless. I'm not an expert. But the rational response is, well, I've rehearsed it and past demos went really well. So my action plan here is, breathe and deliver. Because writing turns abstract worries into concrete data that you can sort of debug, just like a code. The final sort of step then, before you rectify, is evaluate. So after the event, how accurate was my automatic negative thought? Compare your feelings before and after. Often the feared sort of crash never happened. And then the evidence bank weakens future automatic negative thoughts. And finally, then rectify. So, sort of rectify any kernel of truth. Did you miss a fact? Did you speak too fast? If this is a presentation, did you pace it right? Reach out. Maybe ask a peer to do a debrief, do a 3-minute vent with a colleague, and maybe even get professional help with a coach or a therapist. So just remember, EATER isn't about crushing yourself into positivity. It's a pragmatic 5-step sort of circuit: echo, ask, tackle, evaluate, and rectify. And that will starve the ants. And thank you, Chris, for your comments. Lovely to hear from you again. So sometimes it's a battle between what are irrational versus rational thoughts. But yeah, you're right, Chris. The irrational thoughts sometimes are louder, aren't they? So let's move on then to do something that some of you are going to find very, very helpful, because we all have strengths. Have you heard of the character strengths from the VIA? I don't know whether you've come across this. But just for a moment, I want you to think about your character strengths. We've all got 24 character strengths. Every individual possesses all 24 in different degrees. But some of us have like a top 5. Like, would you be able to name your top 5? And I'm just going to show you sort of, maybe there's some options you could choose from this slide. So what would you say are your top strengths here? Maybe for you it's zest. Maybe for you it's bravery or creativity. Maybe for you it's love or self-control. So what's your initial reaction here? Now, we're not so good at blowing our own trumpets. We're very good at automatic negative thoughts and imposter syndrome. But I give you permission. Let's give each other permission now to praise ourselves. What are our strengths? Yes, we've got weaknesses too, but that's not what I'm asking you. What are your 5 top strengths, would you say? Now, it's okay. We're not going to judge you. It might be that you want to go away and ask somebody else, what do you think my top 5 character strengths are? Okay, I think you're all a bit shy to sort of name your character strengths, but I think it's really interesting that we were very quick to notice that the negative things, but this is hard. So if you're wondering, okay, how do I find out? Because I'm not sure. You can actually go to the VIA website and do a free character strength analysis. Oh, great. You've had a good think, and a few of you are coming in now with some ideas. So these 24 strengths, each of us has this unique blend, and they're not just nice qualities to have, they're scientifically validated traits that reflect the best of who we are. And these aren't just things we do, they're the ways of being, and they matter. Because when we know what our top strengths are, like forgiveness, humility, kindness, perspective, teamwork, thank you, Rishi, like love, humor, kindness, honesty, and fairness. Lovely. Oh, Gail, you think you're in the wrong job, do you? Kindness, humor, humility, love, and teamwork. It's a really interesting thing to do. So I would encourage you to have a look at your strengths. These were developed by psychologists to help us understand our core capacities for human goodness. These things cut across all cultures, all backgrounds, all religions. And why do they matter? Because these are about being effective and resilient and fulfilled. We feel it more engaged at work when we work with our strengths and we're using our strengths. We bounce back faster from setbacks when we use our strengths. When we also tend to feel more connected to our values and our goals. So Name your strengths, take the free VIA strength survey online, or reflect like some of you have done here, and then start to claim those strengths. Own them. These are your tools. Use kindness to strengthen a team dynamic. Use curiosity to tackle a complex problem. Use humor to lift a tense moment. Because when we use our strengths, we then build personal power. And this is really what today is all about, that internal energy that fuels growth. So ask yourself, what do I see in myself? Which ones do I want to use more often? So here's the link to the free survey. Pick your top 5 and use that daily for 3 weeks. And when you face a difficult situation, think of which of your top strengths you can use. So I want to invite you to strengthen your strengths and to name your strengths and ask your friends at work, your colleagues, maybe your manager to help name your strengths. So we need to practice this concept of a growth mindset. We need to get really practical. This is the point in the presentation now. We've got 20 minutes left. Let's get practical. So first, how do we adopt this growth mindset? I can. I can. A lot of people say I can't, but we want to add the yet. I can't yet onto the end. This is the growth mindset. This means seeing challenges as chances to learn, not proof that you're not good enough. You're not supposed to have it all together. You're supposed to be in progress. And every time you stretch beyond your comfort zone, you're literally expanding your capacity. The second thing, I mean, come on, we're old enough and wise enough to just be unapologetically ourselves. Let's just do it. Life's too short. This doesn't mean being loud or bold if that's not you. It means being authentic, owning your values, owning your voice, owning your weirdness. That's your strength. And we lose power when we try to dilute ourselves to fit in. I've worked in insurance for many, many years. And back in the day, that wasn't the way. People didn't sort of that they weren't so human, I suppose. But times have changed. We need to bring our whole selves to work, and we need to be authentic. Doesn't mean we can't be amazing at our job. The other thing is finding a role model. Maybe has anyone got a role model, perhaps that they admire? Because we need to look for someone we admire, not just for what they do, but how they do it. We want to watch, how do they handle pressure? How do they advocate for themselves? How do they lead? And then you can ask yourself, what can I borrow? What can I try? Then we've got number 4, grabbing opportunities. So personal power grows when we stop waiting for perfect conditions and we start saying yes before we're 100% ready. So that new project, that chance to speak up, that moment to volunteer, grab it, even if it scares you. Fifth, we want to pay attention to our language because words shape how others see us. But even more importantly, words shape how we see ourselves. So instead of saying, I'm just helping out, you could say, I am leading this piece of work. Instead of saying, sorry, I might be wrong, maybe say, look, here's what I'm seeing. And language is energy. Number 6 is taking credit. This doesn't mean arrogance, it means ownership, really. Because when you've done good work, name it. Don't just shrug it off or deflect. Yes, I've worked hard on this and I'm proud of how that went. Because when you take credit, you signal to yourself that you matter and to others. And finally, clarity is power. Ask for what you want. So many of us wait to be noticed or invited or rewarded. But whether it's feedback or development or flexibility, name it and ask with clarity. The worst answer is no, but the best answer is, well, I mean, it might just change your life. It might just change your path. Okay. So I'm going to just do a 2-minute meditation for confidence. I hope you enjoy this. This is to help your self confidence. This is something that won't be for everybody, but this is really helpful. Okay, sorry that didn't work for some of you, but most of you heard it. Um, so yeah, that's something that you can do. Again, if you look up that on YouTube, you can do the self-confidence meditation. But I want to sort of start to wrap up the session. And of course, if there are any questions, please let me know. And I'm glad that it was lovely. Thank you for that feedback. It's very simple. A lot of people are a bit, oh, I don't do meditation, but actually, I find it incredibly powerful. I think often when we're stressed and when we're working long hours, like some of you have said you do, we need to reset our nervous system, don't we? We need to breathe. I mean, something we do all the time, but just stopping, I mean, just taking 2 minutes and doing that was only 2 minutes. It really helps us reset. So if you do nothing else, building that into your day will help your parasympathetic nervous system sort of kick in, really. But I want to just start to wrap up by talking about being assertive because we want to up our assertion skills. We said at the beginning that personal power, being assertive is something that we want to look at. And assertive language starts with me, my feelings, my needs. And this might not be natural to many of us. So instead of, you never give me new opportunities to develop, you might say, I feel my skills and capabilities aren't being used to their full extent. So there's a shift there. Same message, zero accusation. So we need to master this small but mighty word, no. A flat can't sounds like a bit of a wall, but if we say no because, so I can't take that on today because I need to prep for a client meeting. I mean, I bet you know people that do this really well. And you think, how do they do that? So it's a really great thing to do. You can offer an option. I can't take that on today because I need to prep for a client meeting. How about next Tuesday? And Harvard psychologist, someone called Ellen Langer, found that adding a reason after because it boosts cooperation by up to 93%. So give your reason. And we can start with empathy, can't we? We can, when we're disagreeing, we can say, I understand, or I see your point. And then we add our view. I understand the urgency, but my concern is the timeline. And when you're declining, maybe you could say, look, I know you're under pressure. I really wish I could help, but I just don't have capacity today. So empathy kind of cushions firmness. Also, we can ask rather than assume. We could invite collaboration, like what resources would make this feasible, or could we shift the deadline? And we can use statements that are conditional to sort of de-emotionize problems. So, for example, when the report wasn't finished in time, it created a problem for the team's sales presentations. And now you're discussing cause and effect, not personal flaws, and you've opened the door there to solutions. We also want to dodge foot in mouth itis. Anyone sort of relate to that? So we can pause and we can breathe and we can think before we speak. And we can stick to facts plus feelings. We can skip labels and exaggerations. So assertiveness, it's not volume. Sometimes I notice when people are practicing assertiveness, they just get very loud and defensive and it goes a bit wrong and they come across a bit aggressively. But this is just clarity wrapped in respect. I statements, a reasoned because, empathy first. So if we look at these statements, I have plans for a vacation next week, so I was thinking that it would be great if someone could cover my workload. Is that assertive? Or I need to attend this training. Would it be possible if I could take some time out for that from my regular schedule? Actually, let's try and make these more assertive. I will be going on vacation next week, so I will need someone to cover my workload. I want to attend this training because I believe it will help me progress in my role and my career. So again, to be passive is to let others decide for you. To be aggressive is to decide for others. But let's be assertive. Let's decide for ourselves. Okay. So let's now think about how do we build our personal power? How do we become that 2%, where we're not like everyone else. We're not in the comfort zone like everyone else. So here's the very blunt statistic. About 98% of people spend most of their time parked in their comfort zone. It's very predictable, it's very low risk, and it's where dreams hibernate. So let's create the magic and let's try and live. I try and live in the other 2%. What about you? I mean, do you like the idea of this? Because this is the tiny slice where you and I decide to be accountable for our own growth. Even when it feels a little bit awkward, a bit shaky, a bit scary, and we're not always up for doing this, but we need to think about stepping up. And it often feels like stepping onto ice, quite wobbly. Maybe your first difficult conversation, your voice quivers. That discomfort, it's isn't really a danger signal, it's the green light that you are expanding. So we want to relabel, the sensation, I'm stretching, I'm not failing. And you are never too old to learn, Paul. You're totally right. That's my view. You're never too old. I mean, I'm constantly learning, and if we think about the 5 ways to well-being, one of those 5 ways is keep learning. That is one of the ways we need to look after our mental health, really. Keep learning. You're never too old. I love that, Paul. So ask yourself this week, exploring new things. What's one arena I've never tried? What's the skill I've secretly envied in others? And then schedule a micro action. Just make the call. Watch the tutorial. I mean, let me know in the chat, what have you learned recently? Kind of let's get inspiration from the other 122 people on this session. What have you learned? What have you explored lately? And how old are you? I mean, you don't have to share that, but I'd love to hear from like a 60-year-old that's just learned something like to dance or something amazing like that. Because anything that moves the boundary line outward is what we're trying to do. We're trying to live without limits. We're trying to act in spite of fear. It's about forward motion, drafting the book proposal before you feel ready, pitching the idea, knowing your voice might shake. We want to feel fulfilled, not just busy, because comfort zone living is often busy. The 2% living, well, this is purpose. This is purposeful. Oh, yes, I love that, Paul. You're feeling more confident at 69. Oh, I think I'm going to have to give that a love heart. Thank you. That's so great to hear. So we want to feel fulfilled. We want to embrace the unknown. We want to choose happiness. And the unknown is a blank page, not a threat. Each new experience is raw material for growth. Describing your feelings when you feel anxious, Julie, is that a question or is that a suggestion that you want to make? So today, you decide. You can stay in the 98%, or you can join the 2% who stretch, who stumble, who soar, actually. So I'd love it if you chose that edge and you acted through fear and you watch your personal power multiply. This is what we want for all of you. Okay. So think of a time when you felt this is going to help you. Think of a time when you felt confident. What was the situation? How did it feel? What did you say to yourself? How did you act? And answer the same 4 questions for a time when you felt lacking. So this is where we can make the switch. Based on the above, what positive statements can you actually use in the future? What actions and thoughts empower you? Okay. So This is a lot of work to do. We're giving you quite a lot of homework. I think you might need to look back at this recording, press pause and look at these 3 questions to start to sort of make that shift. So we really want to invite you to create this power plan. This is what we're going to leave you with. Your power plan looks a little bit like this because we've talked about how imposter syndrome shows up. We've looked at ways to reframe those stories that we tell ourselves. Now we need to turn that insight into action. So I want to introduce you to something that I call your power plan. This is your personal roadmap that you can take away and that you can use every day after this. So I want to encourage you to choose your empowering thought. Think back to something from today that really landed for you. Maybe it was the idea that effort builds ability, or maybe it was the idea that asking for help is strength, not weakness. So pick one empowering thought that feels true for you. So please feel free to share that in the chat. Maybe it might be, I don't need to be perfect to be powerful. Okay. Maybe it's safe to take up space. What we need to do then is turn that into an affirmation. So take that thought and rephrase it. Okay. I don't need to say yes to everything. So rephrase that as a strong statement and say that out loud. I lead with courage. I am enough. I'm I am enough exactly as I am. Okay. So turn that into a sort of affirmation. This is kind of your mantra and use it when you're brushing your teeth. I am enough exactly as I am. Um, I speak with confidence. And then I want you to define one empowering action. So ask yourself, what's one small way I can live that mantra this week? Maybe it's I'm going to speak up in a team meeting. Maybe it's I'm going to ask a question even if I feel nervous. So try something new that stretches you, no matter how old you are. So if your mantra is I have a voice worth hearing, your action might be I'm going to contribute at least one idea in my next meeting. And I want you to visualize it. Picture yourself doing it. What are you wearing? Who's around you? What do you feel in your body? So here's your plan. Empowering mantra, what you'll say, empowering action, what you'll do, empowering vision, what you'll see. So I want to encourage you to rate now your understanding of how you can overcome your self-limiting beliefs and increase your confidence. And I'm going to put a link here as well to um, a QR code that you can scan. Grace has also put an evaluation form in the chat. And we really hope you enjoyed the session. It looks like there's lots of fives, so it looks as though you've learned a lot about your, building unshakable confidence, which is great. Thank you, Chris. Great to see you too. And really lovely. I'm going to hand back to Niall now to sort of wrap up the session.
Well, thank you so much, Debbie. That was really interesting and insightful, and I'm just seeing from the comments that I know that lots of people on the call felt exactly the same. So thank you for taking the time to run through all of that with us. Definitely some personal points that I will take some time out to look more into, and I'm sure lots of others are thinking the same. And thank you to everybody else who has joined today, and for just taking an hour out to go through this important topic and start having these conversations. It's a pleasure to see you as always, and thank you also to Grace for helping us organise things. So we hope to see you all very soon, and I will leave you all now to get on with the rest of your days. Thank you very much.